All right, folks, we got some news to get to today, and I am so excited for this. We don't have quite every piece of news in here, but we're keeping this a little succinct today because it's a special day for me and my partner. That being said, we're going to talk about Hollow Knight Silksong. We now have a release date for it, in addition to an interview that explains why they took so damn long to make this game. More than that, we have an updated Famitsu sales chart for the last 2 weeks. Then we got to dive into, well, something happened on our podcast last night, and I'm really excited about it, but it has to do with a new third-party game coming to Nintendo Switch 2 from a major IP. Can't stress enough it's a rumor, but one that I think is definitely worth the discussion. We also have an announcement of another game coming to Switch 2. That's right, the Switch 2 game announcements are starting to roll in, and we have a smidge of news on Metroid Prime 4 that should be making people really, really happy. That being said, folks, got to remind you, we're giving away 5 copies of Kirby Air Riders. In order to enter, all you got to do is go down to the link in the pinned comment or the description. We're also on our road to 160,000 subscribers, so if you're enjoying the content, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe. Let's go ahead and dive in to this Hollow Knight Silksong release trailer, as you're about to see. You're not going to hear the music here. We'll put a link down in the description for you to get the full trailer so you can hear the wonderful music track, because it's utterly amazing. But we learned some things here. Obviously, you know, to the peak of the Haunted Kingdom, you're ascending. But more than that, there's a ton of enemies, like hundreds of enemies in the game. But also, as you're going to see in a bit, 40 plus, well, actually, maybe it's not plus, maybe it's just 40 boss fights. That is insane. That is an insane amount of boss fights. So, as you see, the gameplay here looks super crisp. This is obviously way more footage of the game that's well beyond the demo at Gamescom and the one they had back at Gamescom and E3 in 2019. This looks incredible. It sounds incredible. The world looks incredible. As you see, it's a handcrafted world just like the original. Team Cherry is literally a team of 3 developers. We have to remember that. So them putting out a game of this high caliber and quality, this is just not something you're accustomed to from a team of just 3 people. So you vanquished over 40 legendary boss fights. See, I'm glad I originally said over. That's what I thought it originally said. You're seeing some of the boss fights here right now, and telling you, you gotta listen to the audio of this trailer because dude, it is stunning. But you restore the Kingdom's Hope, and really the big thing we're gonna get here towards the end of the trailer is obviously a release date, right? We've been all waiting for this release date, and thankfully, we're not gonna have to wait much longer because this game is releasing on, wait for it, September 4th. That's right. We're just a couple weeks away from being able to play the full Hollow Knight Silksong game. That is obviously incredible. I'm very happy about that. We'll be able to go hands-on with the game a little bit earlier at PAX West as well, so we'll have a little preview to drop before the game actually comes out, but I'm really excited about that. But this game's been in development a long time. As I said, the very first demo for this game was back at E3 2019 and Gamescom 2019. It was the same demo, and yeah, that was a long time ago. It's like 6 years ago. Well, what took us so long? Well, Bloomberg here actually dug into that. So why Silksong took 7 years to make? The highly anticipated indie game has been in production for so long that it's become an internet meme. The wait is over. It's a surreal to write, but it's true. Silksong will be out September 4th. Just 6 years of near total silence from the developers and enough feverish anticipation to make it the most wishlisted game on Steam. By the way, 15 million copies of the original has sold today. That's a huge amount for an indie title. The sequel to the indie hit Hollow Knight is releasing in 2 weeks. Team Cherry, the small team behind both games, announced the news Thursday in a trailer. We just saw that one. Why did it take so long? Often, such protracted development cycles are caused by mismanagement and result in painful burnout among the staff. But speaking to me last week on a video call from their office in Adelaide, Australia, Team Cherry co-founders Ari Gibson and William Pellin said that making Silksong has been nothing but a joyful process. We've been having fun, Gibson said. This whole thing is just a vehicle for our creativity. It's nice to make fun things. The lengthy production wasn't the result of development challenges or obstacles, they said. They just needed all these years to ensure Silksong was exactly the game they wanted to make. It was never stuck or anything, Gibson said. It was always progressing. It's just the case that we're a small team, and games take a lot of time. There wasn't any big controversial moment behind it. The Silksong saga started in 2017 when Team Cherry released Hollow Knight, an action platformer set in a vast world of cartoon bugs. A Switch version released the following year, adding to the momentum. By the end of 2018, millions of fans were raving about its polished gameplay, distinct style, and impeccable vibes. As of today, the game has sold 15 million copies. Team Cherry told me, making it one of the most successful independent video games ever. Initially, Gibson and Pellin had planned to release an expansion pack revolving around Hornet, one of its key characters, but in February 2019, they announced that the expansion had grown too big, and they would instead become a full-fledged sequel titled Silksong. Hollow Knight has been massive, and their plan at the outset was to build a smaller world for Silksong. To ensure that the game felt just as deep, they'd implement an elaborate quest system that would offer the player reasons to backtrack and revisit old locations, in contrast to Hollow Knight, which had a single town full of shops and characters to meet. There would also be multiple towns, each serving as a hub for quests. Even at the point we were recognizing that it was going to become another giant thing to rival the scale of Hollow Knight, or probably exceed it, Gibson said. And then because of how we work, obviously the world ended up just as big or bigger, and the quest system existed, and the multiple towns existed. Suddenly, you end up 6-7 years later. It all came down to their development style, which may have been too much fun. Gibson and Pellin, who were joined by a programmer, Jack Vine, composer Chris Larkin, and a few contractors who helped with the programming and testing, started off by designing the core gameplay for Hornet, the game's slick protagonist. From there, it was easy to implement and test out new ideas, even as the game grew bigger. We are very fortunate that we have a development method that is so enjoyable, Gibson said. Not sure how exactly we stumbled into that. Everything comes together quickly. You can see results fast. Ideas turn into something that exists in the game almost immediately before your eyes, and that's very satisfying. And that allows you to go off on these tangents and meet weird characters because someone's offhandedly mentioned a weird character as an idea and the other person laughed, and that's enough. You're always working on a new idea, a new item, a new area, a new boss, Pellin said. That stuff is so nice. It's for the sake of just completing the game that we're stopping. We could have kept going. And the downside of this methodology was that it could have lasted forever. I remember at some point I had to just stop sketching, Gibson said, because I went, everything I'm drawing here has to end up in the game. That's a cool idea. That's in. That's a cool idea. That's in. You realize if I don't stop drawing, this is going to take 15 years to finish. During the development of Hollow Knight, Gibson and Pellin frequently posted game updates and talked to players. At the end of 2019, Team Cherry posted one more update about Silksong, then went silent, much to fans' dismay. We felt like continued updates were just going to sour people on the whole thing, Gibson said, because all we could really say is, we're still working on it. They wanted to be particularly cautious about avoiding spoilers. Much of the thrill of Hollow Knight came from accidentally stumbling upon secret passageways or breaking down walls to find hidden bugs. Silksong has plenty of its own secrets that they didn't want to detail before release. Plus, they thought Silksong would be out much sooner. Instead of popping up and bugging people for the sake of it, it felt like our actual responsibility was to just work on the game, Pellin said. Probably at the time we thought we'd go quiet for a year or two, then the game would come out. In 2020, as COVID disrupted most video game productions around the world, Adelaide was able to stave off the worst of the pandemic, going months without new cases, which allowed Gibson and Pellin to continue plugging along on Silksong. Seems a little odd knowing that the rest of the world had such a dramatic and isolating period, Gibson said. Here, we were going to cafes and having brunch. Silksong briefly resurfaced in 2022 during an Xbox event, which promised that all of the games shown would be out within a year. Xbox doubled down on Twitter, saying that Hollow Knight sequel would be out before June 2023. At the time, they all thought it was true. We did genuinely believe that was the case, Pellin said. There was a period of 2 to 3 years when I thought it was going to come out within a year. But then the game kept growing. Silksong has more elaborate bosses than Hollow Knight, more gameplay systems, and more interactivity. Gibson and Pellin wanted objects in the world to react to Hornet's various tools, which required a ton of drawing and animation work. I think we're always understanding the amount of time and effort it'll take to us to achieve things, Gibson said. It's also that problem where, because we're having fun doing it, it's not like it's taking longer, this is awful, we really need to get past this phase. It's, this is very enjoyable space to be in. Let's perpetuate this with some new ideas. The longer development lasted, the more pressure Gibson and Pellin felt to ensure that everything was as fine-tuned as possible. They'd already spent 4 years on it. Why would they rush now? The more time they spent polishing some parts, the more time they needed to apply it consistently across the rest. There's a level of finish that has to be met throughout the entire game, Pellin said. all the way the systems interact, all the hidden work that pops up later on. It's multiplicative. As you add stuff, the process of tying it all back together just increases. Throughout development, Team Cherry remained tiny, which may have extended the production time, but also saved them from the slog of having to manage and delegate. We don't want to mess with the formula and then find out it's not fun, Gibson said. I used to manage teams in past lives. I don't really want to do that ever again. Staying so small also meant eschewing the production practices commonplace in many game development studios. What is Jira? Gibson said when asked if they use the task management application. Is it a software? Pelin said, adding that they'd briefly used Trello before their account was deactivated because they didn't use it enough. Perhaps the biggest reason Silksong took so long was that Team Cherry never had to worry about the one thing that keeps other independent developers awake at night: money. During the production of Hollow Knight, they stayed lean, sometimes living off leftover triangle sandwiches that their office neighbor would bring them after meetings. My dad would sometimes pop up and give me $20, Gibson said. I'd be like, oh, I'm having coffee today. Thanks to their first game's massive financial success, Gibson and Pelin no longer have to scrounge leftovers. For Pelin, who has 2 kids and a third on the way, that's provided an inestimable peace of mind. For Gibson, who said he spends most of his time at the office, it hasn't changed much. I live in a very basic 2-bedroom apartment, he said. Sometimes I think, you know what would be better? A 1-bedroom apartment, because then there's even less to maintain. The game has continued to generate revenue by reaching new players, perhaps in large part due to the Silksong buzz. When the studio announced Silksong in February 2019, Hollow Knight had sold 2.8 million copies. The game had sold another 12 million copies since then, allowing Team Cherry to keep working on the sequel indefinitely without having to worry about running out of funds. We're very lucky in that regard, Gibson said. I don't ever really think about it that much. Maybe that's the privilege of it. As the years went on, the hype kept building. A Reddit forum dedicated to the game filled up with nonsensical blabber and made-up tweets, which the user called Silk Post, a variation on the expletive. Meanwhile, chat sections for video game live streams and Nintendo Direct events were plagued with the same feral messages repeated over and over. Silksong when? Gibson and Pelin tuned it all out, rarely going online. They say they never read comments on YouTube or Reddit, although occasionally friends or family would send them some of the funniest ones. It's nice that people are passionate about the game, and they've obviously formed their own strange or very exciting communities around it. Feels like we're going to ruin their fun by releasing the game, Pelin said. Once in a while, people would show up at the Team Cherry office, sometimes with their children, perhaps hoping for a Willy Wonka type experience. Inevitably, they were disappointed by what they found instead. It's a grubby room with cardboard boxes, Gibson said. Their walls remain the same dull avocado color they were when Team Cherry moved in more than a decade ago. They never even put up art. They've been too busy making the game. In early 2025, Gibson and Pelin began to see the finish line and started making plans to release the game in the fall. Players desperate for information devoured every scrap of news, like the announcement that it would be playable at a museum in September, hoping this might finally be the year. Both Nintendo Company and Microsoft Corp's Xbox said during live events this year that Silksong was planned for 2025. But fans were cautious. They've been down this road before. Meanwhile, Team Cherry kept working. The shape of the game has been finalized for a while, Pelin said. The last year or two has been all about the details, adding small encounters, polishing everything, and tying it all together. And they're still working to finalize things until the last possible minute. As we spoke, Silksong, a little more than 3 weeks out, I spotted a programmer Jack Vine in the background tweaking code for one of the game's console ports. Gibson and Pelin say they're happy that the game is finally coming out, and even happier that they will get to keep working on it, which they still find enjoyable even after 7 years. They haven't burned out or shown any desire to take a break. Instead, they're already making big plans to add extra content to Silksong in the months and years to come. Launching it is obviously quite exciting, Pelin said. What comes after for us is equally exciting. The most interesting thing now is what we can add to it next, Gibson said. We got a plan. Admittedly, some of the plan for that stuff is kind of ambitious as well, but hopefully we can achieve some of it. Stay tuned for 2032 to see how that turns out, which is pretty wild. And the plan could end up turning into a third game, as it did with Hornet. So pretty wild stuff, pretty exciting. Obviously, guys, we've been waiting for Silksong for so long. We were going to take our time and go through that interview. It was the interview. It was the questioning that we needed. Now let's move on. Feels weird to move on from maybe the biggest story in this video, but we need to because Famitsu sales are out. Famitsu Japan sales, these are 2 weeks worth of data from 8/4 through 8/17 because it was a holiday last week. Mario Kart World's at number 1 at 144,911. Donkey Kong Bonanza at number 2 at 60,200. Demon Slayer Hinokami Chronicles 2 is number 3 at 38,200 sold. Now the console sales are what we really care a lot about here. Switch 2 sold 179,641. That's roughly 89,500 or so per week. So that's actually up over the last week of data we got, which is around 60,000. Nintendo Switch is at 37,346. That's obviously all the systems combined. Switch OLED, Switch Lite, and Switch OG. Then you have the PS5 at 17,131, Xbox Series at 652, and yes, 16 PS4s per week sold for 32. Switch 2 is just on fire in Japan. It continues to be on fire in Japan, and there's really no stopping it. There hasn't been any major release since July 17th to push sales, and they're still just doing really well. You think this is crazy? Wait till like Dragon Quest 1+2 HD drops. I think that's going to be a big pusher for sales. Next up, we have a story that actually comes from our podcast last night, and I am thrilled, absolutely, unequivocally thrilled to let Kiwi Talks, who people keep calling an industry insider when he's just sort of an interviewer that knows people, but you know, sometimes he drops little nuggets, and Thunderstash had a question for him last night that got us a rumor about a certain franchise coming to Switch 2. Here's the podcast, and now let's go ahead and play the clip.
Quick question. Since you're the Bethesda guy, right? You're still the Bethesda guy?
I'm multiple guys, apparently.
Don't pigeonhole him. Come on.
No, I know. No, it was about a tweet he had. But Fallout, right? This is something I've talked about a lot about the TV show and the success of it. And that was why they made a point to get the Fallout 4 PS5 SKU, you know, the upgrade running smoothly on PlayStation. So fans have a recent game, right, to play on their PlayStation 5 because of the success of the show. And obviously season 2 is coming out. And one thing that I've been talking about a lot is, you know, from what I had heard, they really would have liked to have gotten Fallout 4 running on Switch 1, but that just wasn't in the cards, obviously. What about Switch 2?
Yeah. Without going into too much detail, there is something Fallout related coming. I'm not going to tell you whether it's 4. I'm not going to tell you whether it's Fallout 3 remastered or New Vegas remastered. I will just say there is something Fallout related coming.
One of those.
You got me happy because we've been talking about all 3 of those, and I'm a big fan. I think it would be such a great fit, of course, on Switch to be able to play that on the go. So,
well,
yeah,
what
I'm not going to press you on it.
I would love to see like Samus armor in Fallout, right? They did the whole like Link thing with Skyrim.
Skyrim,
Yeah.
So doing Fallout and have like Samus armor or the ability to go
that would
into
be so cool.
Samus is a bounty hunter.
Yeah. Like
Makes
you
sense.
could easily do it. So, and I know Todd Howard is a big Nintendo fan. I've seen him on record confirm that he thinks Nintendo are the best, like design.
Yeah, I feel like
period.
I remember some
Awesome.
quotes from Todd Howard when Switch 1, I think before it got revealed, when he said that he's seen Nintendo's next hardware and he's a huge fan of it. You know, the whole concept around it, that he loves it.
Yeah, I think I remember him
heard
saying
give
that
it.
it was the best presentation he'd ever seen for a game.
Yeah.
If I ever get to interview him, I'll ask him, but I'll cross that path when I come to it.
Obviously, something Fallout coming to Switch 2 would be absolutely incredible. But that being said, folks, we got to get to our next piece of news here. Again, another game coming to Switch 2 getting announced. This goes over on X here from Stealth. Says NIS America announced they are releasing Ys X Proud Nordics in the West for Switch 2 and PC. 2026 is the ETA on it, as you can see here at the end of that trailer. 120 FPS mode, new mechanics, new high difficulty dungeon, new storyline, seamlessly integrated in the game. So, really exciting stuff. Ys fans that are looking for new content and all that, going to be really excited. Probably a lot of people that want to play this on Switch 2. And it's Switch 2 and PC for now, no other platform. Let me get to the big story at the end. Look, we all want to know, when the hell is Metroid Prime 4 coming out? We talked about it a little bit on the podcast last night. Most of us think it's still coming out this year, but we have some more evidence for it coming out this year. Metroid Prime 4 has now been rated by the ESRB. It's now been pretty much rated by every major ratings board. It's been rated in Germany. It's been rated in India. It's been rated in Europe. It's been rated everywhere. So yeah, it being rated is a really good thing, because that means it's probably coming out in 2025. Doesn't guarantee it, but it does make it look pretty much content complete at this point for it to be rated by all of the boards. So again, Metroid Prime 4, I still expect it to be out this year. Will it be September? Will it double up in October or November with the other games that are coming out? Or is it going to end up being a December game? We have no idea. The next Nintendo Direct, rumored next month, I think, is when we find out. All right, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I am Nathaniel Rumpeljans from Nintendo Prime. It's been a pleasure speaking with you folks, and we'll catch you in the next video.